the big question we seek to answer in this module is what challenges are faced by all adolescents moving into adulthood, and how do they differ for students with disabilities? The key concepts we will discuss are number 1, adolescence and the transition to adulthood. Number 2, quality of life and disabilities. Number 3, self-determination and quality of life. And 4, self-determination in action. This figure demonstrates all of the competing influences on the modern adolescent human being, regardless of disability diagnosis. The ecology of adolescence has changed across the course of history. From ancient rites of passage to the agrarian economics of the Middle Ages, then to the Industrial Revolution, to our present concept of schooling, different things have been expected of adolescents in our society. Each time period in history has had its own rites of passage to adulthood. These socially sanctioned activities have allowed teenage individuals to practice being an adult by learning specialized roles in the area of work skills, social behavior, and survival or life skills. Critical point. Transition to adulthood has become more complex for all adolescents. The history of individuals with disabilities follows a similar continuum. Initially, those with disabilities suffered from the practice of infanticide, then eugenics and forced sterilization. Currently, medical models have given way to a more developmental/behavioral model and to a more progressive model of societal integration for individuals with disabilities. The emergence of transition policy has followed a similar course, beginning with the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. Pre-EHA studies found that graduates with disabilities were experiencing unemployment, low wages, low-level jobs, lack of post-secondary education, and lack of community participation and independent living. Post-EHA studies found that 10 years after EHA, students were still earning lower wages and still had lower levels of employment and engagement in post-secondary education and in the community in general. The National Longitudinal Transition Study, number 1, data found that community-based work experiences and vocational education were significantly correlated with better post-school outcomes. However, there is one critical point pointed out. Follow-up studies showed that special education graduates continue to experience poorer integration after the implementation of the EHA of 1975. The emergence of transition policy led to research on post-school outcomes. The National Longitudinal and Transition Study number 2 data collected from 2003 found both positive and negative differences since the initial results in 1987. School completion increased while dropout rate decreased. Living arrangements stayed stable. Large increases in youth with disabilities being subject to disciplinary actions. Increase in post-secondary education participation was greatest at two-year colleges. 70% of youth 2 years out of college had been employed at some point. In 2003, youth were less likely to be full-time employed. The emergence of transition policies also led to quality of life considerations. Quality of life studies called for the expansion of the focus of post-school outcome studies to include social networks and relationships and personal fulfillment, physical and material well-being, performance in adult roles, and personal fulfillment. Another critical point. The transition initiative emerged as a result of a shift in focus from providing equitable services to creating accountability for special education outcomes.